have to look at the history of this. We have offered to meet with the Iranians many times while we were in the deal, and they refused. We are one missile strike away from a regional war, and we are accumulating risk of a regional war if we do not reestablish deterrence, and if we accept a culture of largely inaction and accepting Iranian answers, sort of having it both ways, we are increasing the risk of a regional conflict. And that's why this is a good week for us to be here, to be working with other countries so that we can make the case of the need to restore deterrence against Iranian aggression. We are trying to challenge the status quo. We are rejecting the defeatist mentality that has creeped into the world's approach to Iran and tilted the balance in its favor. We are not only exposing the scale and the scope of Iran's malign activity, we are actively seeking to diminish its role in the region and reverse the gains that it made during the negotiation and implementation of the Iran nuclear deal. We know based on intelligence and open source analysis that these attacks were conducted by Iran. We are confident in this assessment. The evidence, including the complexity, scope, and impact of the attack, indicates this is the case. Yet Iran, from its president on down, has maintained that the Houthis are responsible. Let me be clear. The attacks were more complex, larger in scale, and more precise than anything the Houthis are capable of executing. Accepting the Iranian version of events undermines international security and conveniently demands nothing of nations in response. Our pressure campaign is aimed at changing the regime's behavior and bringing Iran back to the negotiating table so that diplomacy can prevail. We want Iran to end its support for terrorist groups and reject extremism. We want Iran to use diplomacy to meaningfully address and resolve conflicts, not as a sleight of hand to fuel and prolong them. We want Iran to respect the sovereignty of all nations, whether they are a friend or an enemy. We want Iran to spend less time scheming on how to undermine its international obligations and more time figuring out how to live up to them. Well, the president now for a couple of years has said that he would meet with President Rouhani. Secretary Pompeo said a number of months ago that he would meet with the Iranians without preconditions. This is a commitment that has been made many, many times over the last few years. Iran has yet to accept our offer. That offer was made while we were still in the Iran deal, and the offer was not accepted. And it's very clear to make. You have to look at the history of this. We have offered to meet with the Iranians many times while we were in the deal, and they refused. And so after the president got out of the deal, we continued to offer diplomatic outcomes. The Iranians have not met diplomacy with diplomacy. They have met our diplomacy with military force. This is not the first time. When you put pressure on the regime, it reaches for the usual playbooks of either nuclear extortion or threatening much higher levels of violence than we are accustomed to, or that we've decided to accept, as I said in my remarks. I do think that the attacks in Saudi Arabia, French Foreign Minister Le Drian said today or yesterday that these attacks are a game changer. Secretary Pompeo has talked with foreign ministers in Europe, in Asia, in the Middle East. It is clear that Iran has crossed the line by this attack on another country's sovereignty. We believe very strongly that the Iran nuclear deal, you have modest and temporary non-proliferation gains that have come at the expense of missile proliferation, missile testing, regional aggression, and hostage taking. Being outside of the deal gives us a great deal of leverage to address the entire range of threats that Iran presents to the world. I know that for those who negotiated the deal at the time, this was not supposed to be the last word on Iran's threats, and there were supposed to be successive efforts to address the missile program and the regional aggression. We seek a comprehensive deal, and this was announced 16 months ago by Secretary Pompeo. We seek a comprehensive deal that addresses the threats around Iran's nuclear program, its missile program, and its regional aggression and the hostage